Hello everyone, and welcome to our session today on Innovia Service and Support Lunch and Learn. Joining us today is Holly Kutil and her team, and we're excited to have such a fantastic turnout today. Before I pass it over to Holly, I would like to let you know that we are recording this session and it will be posted to our on-demand webinar library for you to review and share with anyone. And if you do have any questions, please feel free to type those into the questions box and we will get them answered during our Q&A session at the end of the presentation. So now I will pass it on to Holly to kick off our presentation.
Thank you so much, Angie. We're so glad that you guys came to join us for lunch today. And so you can see our Innovia Lunch and Learn screen. And I just like to welcome my team to the meeting with us and to lunch and introduce you to them. This is the world-class Innovia Service and Support team. And so at the top of the screen, you'll see our three consultants, Desiree, Tracy, and Marguerite, who are with us today. And then at the bottom, you'll see Daniel and Valerie, our two developers on the team. And so we're here having our lunchtime together and going to talk about some things in the support department and things that we see from perspective, working with all of you out there on your environments, and willing to answer any questions or comments or concerns that you guys have or want to ask us around the ERP, around ISVs, or around support in general and practices that you can implement at your company regarding service and support with us or with your partner if you happen to be with someone else and stuff. So welcome, you guys. I'm so glad to have lunch together today.
Hey, Holly.
Thanks for inviting us all in. It's great to be able to sit and have lunch and chit chat.
Right? It's a good time. So, let's talk about best practices first. Let's go there because, there are some things that each of us have ideas about that we consider best practices, or things that we've seen that maybe coming from another partner over to us, we've seen others not do. And some of the first things we've encouraged them to change or make part of their regular practices and stuff.
One of the things from my end, from the development perspective, I've run into this a couple of times just about consistent documentation. So if you guys are doing your own development, there needs to be a standard process to manage modifications and to move objects, so that we at Innovia and you guys are not conflicting and overwriting changes. So that's something from my end, a best practice just in terms of maintaining your code base.
What are some of those things that we could do, Daniel? Because I know we do see that, like we'll go into a system and we look at their objects or the different areas, and it might be all over the board. Maybe they've had 3 or 4 different partners or different developers working in their system, and it's just, there's no rhyme or reason to any of it. So what would be some of the things you'd suggest that they do?
The first one, and this one's pretty significant, is documenting the changes you've made in code. So part of that is updating the version list. There's a piece of every object in the system that you want to update every time you update the object. And that's just to note that your company's updated it. And there's within the code itself, there's a documentation trigger. So when you update that object, you'll also want to update the documentation trigger, and you'll want to surround the code that you added or changed with some notes that just identify that as custom code, so that when you go to upgrade down the line, you'll be able to pick out that specific code. Or maybe more likely is we'll be doing an upgrade for you, and we'll be able to pick out all the code that you've added, and it makes the upgrade go a lot more smoothly when we can pick out that code easily.
Great point. Because we do get that question a lot. If they're going to upgrade is, can you tell me what's been modified? What are those code changes? And that would make it simpler, like you said, to pick those things out.
Right, and updating the version list of those objects is the easiest way that we can pick out all the objects that we've modified at Innovia. We can pick out all the objects that our clients might have updated, and we can say we at Innovia have updated these maybe 500, 1,000, 2,000 objects, and we can note that those are objects that we've updated, and then have a separate list of objects you've updated. It's just really easy to filter based on that version list. So anytime you update the object, update that version list so we have that noted.
Right.
And Daniel, on the user side of that, I think it's important for the users to also they don't necessarily need to keep track of the code, but keep track of the modifications, because when it comes time to look at an upgrade, you may no longer be with the company and the new person's now sitting there going, I have no idea. I don't know what modifications we've done, and it just makes that process flow so much better. And having been on the user side, I experienced that, and it was like, well, I have no idea. So now I got to go to my partner, wait for them to build the list, which, I got a CEO on my door going, I need this information. I need this information. I had to just keep saying, I'm gathering that information. So I think from a user side, it would be important to keep some kind of track, ticket numbers, the requests that are made, even ones that you don't move forward with. Notate why you don't move forward with them, because somebody may request it down the road and it may be the same reason you don't want to move forward, or maybe something's changed and now you do want to move forward. But always keep a list of what you've done and what you would like to do.
I think that's a good point, Marguerite. Not only documenting your mods, like Daniel was saying, or even, documenting it in terms of what they are in human form, not in code form, but what about documenting the processes and procedures? Because, NAV has sales orders, purchase orders, and everything in between, but every company uses those areas of the system differently. And, every time we get a new customer, we know the challenges of learning their way of doing things, and, which buttons do they click first, second, and third. And, I think that helps us help our customers. It helps us with our testing, but it also helps our customers with onboarding of new staff, training, standard operating procedures, etc. Right?
Right. That's a good point. And those are important things to do. And the steps recorder is a great opportunity that costs you nothing that you can use to do those things. And so you just type in your search on your computer, steps recorder, and it will pop up, and you click it to start, and you start walking through your steps, whatever it is, whether it's in your ERP or in email or in Excel, whatever work process you're doing. It will record those steps and then give you a printout of the steps you took, and also little screen prints along the way of those steps and things that you're doing and stuff. So it's kind of a nice way to do that and capture that information if you are looking for something to do that and gather all your workflows and build that library. Good best practices. Stuff. I always
Hi,
say,
this is Tracy.
hey, Tracy.
I have a best practice that I like to utilize a lot is the company name up in the right-hand corner of your database. A lot of companies don't realize they can place this there. And when they have especially more than one company, we really like to see that indicator of what the company name is. Maybe it's a test database or production database, and you go through the system indicator through the company information page to process that and get that to show, and you can use different colors. But I always like that at best practice. So I see a lot of customers don't utilize that, and we'll bring it to their attention and we'll show them how to do it or place it there for them. But a lot of companies do create companies or test company within RTC, and they fail to put that system indicator there.
Right. And you know what? My pet peeve, and I know it doesn't matter. You can use whatever color you like. Lime green is like my favorite to use on it, but it makes me crazy when people use their production and they put red. For some reason, when I see red, to me it's a stop sign and stuff. And so in my mind, it should be green means go, red means stop. So make your production green and your test red, kind of a thing. But you know, again, use what works for you. But that was one way that helped me when I looked up. It was a quick indicator, you know, if I was in tester and in live using green and red. But there's a bunch of different colors, and there's a little list out there of what they are. They're little codes, so you could punch them in and change those colors. I used to change mine randomly just to see who would notice and say something and stuff. Buy them coffee, the first one that said, hey, the color is different today. It's a great best practice. One of the things I've seen a lot since I've been at Innovia has been inventory periods not being used. And that was something on the user side that I learned along the way, was to close those inventory periods. We didn't have a problem necessarily with people not being able to post, which sometimes that will create, but we had a problem with them not closing, and then every month as they close books, the accountant would come back and say, like, 2 months later, those numbers are off, and they couldn't figure out why. And so here we found out why was because any adjust costs that were happening according to the date the product was received, because we didn't close those periods and stuff. And so when we learned to do that, and every month it became part of the routine to close the last month's inventory period, then it, you know, generated so anything prior received would go to the first of that month, and so it no longer adulterated the books from the prior months that were closed and stuff. But I know it also can create some posting errors and issues if you aren't maintaining that and closing those accounting and posting periods properly. Any other ideas on best practices?
Another best practice I have is actually a current relevant situation that's going on now is, you know, sometimes, especially with ISVs, you'll notice that there are updates that come through and that they need to be done. You know, don't wait until the last, especially if it needs to happen on your local machines. The last thing you want to get to is, especially a lot of companies that have manufacturing or distribution, you don't want to get to those last couple of days of the month and then be trying to push out, you know, upgrades and that, because, you know, what if your computer goes down? You've now taken some of your busiest time and you've put a computer down. So, you know, when you see those upgrades come through, you know, you don't have to necessarily do them the day that they're coming through, but also don't wait until the very end, because, you know, you never know what could happen, and that's just a scary, scary thing. So, you know, when you see those, just make sure to get them scheduled and get them scheduled in a timely manner.
Right, or it always happens at the most inconvenient moment on you randomly and shuts down on you. All right, so let's talk about training. Let's talk around some ideas on training. And so what we see a lot is break fix, help me, change the code, you know, modify a report. But you know, we don't get a ton of like training from our clients. Some who are diligent about it do spend time and energy on training, and then others not so much. And so let's talk about training and how that plays out, because at the end of the day, in my book and my belief is, if we train them and empower them, they're going to spend less money on those break fixes and be able to spend money doing some really cool stuff. And that was my goal at American Ring when I was on the other side, was to be able to, you know, put that money on my budget for my ERP towards some really cool automations and ISVs and things we wanted to do, rather than on fixing stuff that's broken because we weren't sure how to run things or do things.
No, I think that's a perfect topic, Holly. Training would probably, if we spent more time training We may spend less time on the break fixes. We may even spend less time on development, you know, making the overall cost of ownership a little bit less for the product too, and making those upgrades easier. But the people who are running nav today may not be the same people that implemented it yesterday and upgrading it tomorrow. So the continuous training is something that I'm always preaching on, no matter who you are or what version of nav you're using. I think it's extremely important. But I think that if you're doing an implementation, you've got to at least do the initial training, and then the follow-up training the 90 days after you go live, because let's face it, at the beginning you just want to know what to do to get your job done. But 90 days after, hey, you've done it, you can now absorb a little bit more, some of those tips and tricks and shortcuts and icing on the cake. And then when we upgrade too, I think that's a great opportunity. I think it gets missed a lot in the budgets for upgrading. And let's face it, we all know nav. We can now absorb a lot more of the depth and the breadth of the system. It's a great opportunity to not only learn the new features and the new functions and the new way of finding my stuff, but it's also a great opportunity to, you know, hey, show us, you know, this entire granule, because this is a new team, a different department, and different employees that are upgrading it than implemented it. So
True.
you know.
Yeah,
I
and
would
you
like
know,
to add to that.
go on, Trace.
On the training, you know, and we were talking about cross training and training, it's such an unknown to the end user of things they can do and what they can accomplish, whether it's adding columns or removing columns that aren't necessary, currency codes that don't pertain to your company. It's just the unknown that they don't know. They can right click that mouse, and just the simplest training goes such a long way.
It's how I was shown. It's what we've been doing since day one, right? That's what we always
You're
get,
right.
right?
That's what we hear a lot. Yeah.
I don't know why we do that. I was just told to fill that in.
Right?
Yeah. But the
Mhm.
simplest things make your world and your day so much easier and smoother.
Right, and that's why one of the things like that we talk about, and when I talk about extra value added and stuff, I like to see us doing, and I say like be peripheral visioned while you're working with somebody, and look for those little opportunities of saying, did you know this is here? Did you know you could do that? Let me send you a little cheat sheet on something over here, or I noticed you didn't go over to this page, or just the little things like that that we can add to their knowledge base each time we interact with them. And so I encourage our clients to do that more. You know, so many times we only work directly with the IT manager or the NAV administrator, and those top level people. And when there's an issue with a CSR, you know, shoot, let's get on with the CSR and walk through those steps with them. It gives us that opportunity to show them some things maybe they didn't know, empower them, and then they can go teach the rest of their group. And that excites them to be able to go back and say, hey, look what I learned, and share that knowledge as well and stuff. So I find those to be really, really good opportunities, and I encourage our clients to do that more, as you know, giving that power there, you know, stay in control, you know, be the approver of time and everything on a ticket, you know, but say, okay, you know, this problem is happening over in purchasing with Joe. So, you know, work with Joe and walk through those steps with him, because that gives us those opportunities while we're fixing something. We're also able to train and do some little teaching and educating there along the way as well.
And our training goes even outside the box of NAV for some of us. You know, a printer setting might be off, and they might not be seeing the document in the full view, and it's set at a different setting than an 8.5 by 11. And you know, during our training, and we wonder why is that happening, and right away my eyes go to every other screen that I'm looking at. I'm like, oh, your printer settings are off. You know, so the training is just in full. It goes outside of NAV, and we try to help them as we can.
True. And then I know we do try to point them to some other areas. So it's not always training that has to happen directly with us or as a paid opportunity. We have the customer conference that we provide for them, and many of us are there and doing sessions for them to train and equip them there at no cost to them to come and participate in. Donovan's great about providing that for our clients. There's the customer source out on the internet. There's so many places that you could go and find free training and learning for yourselves and your teams that we try to encourage them to get involved in as well. And including some of the others that are paid, like Summit, the different areas. We have our own events page that all of these webinars that we do through Innovia and our ISVs come on and do for us are all there recorded, and then future ones upcoming that Angie posts about and then sets up for all of us are out there, and you can participate in those. Those are all available too as well and stuff. So lots of training opportunities that are free to take advantage of, along with the ones along the way with working with support and service or with a project team as well.
So knowing all those outside, self-help areas, customer source, MSDN or navug.com or our webinars, in terms of development, which resource do we find our developers using the most? And I wonder what Daniel, you or Valerie use. Because I know you guys know almost everything, but for those things that you don't know and you do have to look something up, is there a website that you guys like to visit? And then I pose that same question to the consultants. What's your favorite resource to find answers?
So Microsoft has a lot of really good documentation online. You can actually access it in a couple different ways. There's from the development environment, you can do a help. You click help, and developer and IT help, I believe, is the sub option on that menu.
Was this at Microsoft.com?
Yeah, and it sends you. That's where it sends you. I think to be honest with you, most of the time I access Microsoft's documentation, I do it through Google. It seems like it is a little bit easier to find the documentation that you're looking for. But again, Microsoft does have a lot of information out there, so you can access it through the development environment. You can search for it online. You can do it through Microsoft.com.
Cool.
But yeah, most of the documentation that I like to use is straight from Microsoft. It's accurate.
Cool.
A good point, because there's a lot of not so accurate information out there. You want to be careful where they do go.
Right, and Microsoft does a good job of letting you know which version that documentation applies to. So there's things that have changed, properties that are newly available, properties that are no longer available, and they'll let you know on that page which versions the documentation applies to.
Got it. I think I like the MSDN, which is just another Microsoft site as well, msdn.microsoft.com. It's not as up to date in recent versions like BC or 2018, but it's as recent as 13, 15, and I think 2016 is the last version that it was updated for. But I do like that for the application side of things.
Yeah, I myself like all of the sites. I think all the sites give you insights. One site might not mention one thing, but the other site sure did mention what you needed to see, So I kind of go across the board. I just try to find every little pinpoint that I'm looking for, combine them all in the end to find my resolution.
That's a good point.
Right. Yeah. And that's what I tell them in onboarding, the same kind of a thing is, get out there and take a look at the NAVUG user group, go to Google, go to Microsoft, look for some answers. And then if you can't figure it out on your own, then send in a ticket. Then you've exhausted your opportunities and you know that you really do need help from your partner and stuff, but do your due diligence up front and see if there isn't something out there that you can find an answer and get things fixed or get the training you need. And then send us in your needs when you're certain you can't find it out there, because there is a lot out there.
And on that point, Holly, I mean, like you said, there is a lot of information out there. And when you find something, don't just take it word for word. talk it through to yourself and say, I'm having this issue. Does it appear that this could potentially solve it? Because sometimes it's real straightforward and it seems almost too good to be true. And sometimes it is and sometimes it isn't. But just continuing to walk it through and saying, you know, this is my problem. This is what their solution. Does that make sense? And that's a great way, and that's a lot of how I've learned myself is just walking it through. Because sometimes I read them, I'm like, nope, that's not even close to what I thought my problem was, but now reading that, that's not really my problem. And sometimes I've misunderstood what my problem was, especially on the user side. You know, your people are coming to you and they're saying, well, I have this problem. Well, they're not telling you everything of what is causing that problem. They're just saying, well, I can't post my order. Well, they're not telling you what stage they're trying to post it. Maybe they're not supposed to be able to post it. So I think also walking it through and asking those questions to yourself will help you determine if you're on the right track also.
True. Good points. So, and before we move on to another topic, just one last thing I do want to say about the whole idea of training and looking for things online and answers and stuff, and remind everybody that, you know, a checkbox is a checkbox, and it's not something you want to play with in your production environment. And so, be it that you go and you find an answer somewhere and it says check this box, and it seems pretty simple to just check a box. Don't just go and check it in your live database. Do your due diligence, check it off in your test, run some steps through it, make sure everybody's workflows still work before you do it in your production. Nothing like checking a box that changes the world and then having to call your partner and say, we checked this box and now we are in a mess, or unchecked it.
Very good point, Holly. Also make sure when you're testing, test every possible scenario that you can come up with and check with other people because they may think of a scenario that you do not think of, and test items with inventory, without inventory. Test it every which way you can because at the end of the day, those couple extra minutes or hours of training are going to cost you way less money and way less headache than going in there and doing something and then going, oh goodness, I broke it and now it's going to be a pain to undo.
Yep. All right, so this is my favorite topic. Let's talk about our favorite parts of NAV and BC. So I'm going to go first just because Business Central SaaS is fascinating. There's things we love about it and things we hate about it. We're still in that love-hate relationship with it as we get used to it. It's the SaaS version. On-prem looks just like our NAV 2018, so no issues there. But in the SaaS version, my favoriteest thing ever in the world is that it's got the little arrow on the right and left so you could navigate through the list instead of having to continually go up to the ribbon and get that information. That's just my favorite little tweak that they did in the Business Central SaaS version.
I like the upgradability of it in terms of locking down the base application to modifications. So when you do go to upgrade, you have a set of extensions that you move forward rather than doing a manual merging of your modifications. You can just upgrade and take your extensions and put them into the new database.
Great, and we've seen that, Daniel, because we've had a lot of upgrades. We had the April upgrade, and then we've had a couple since then of smaller upgrades with our clients, you know, and we're talking about, you know, 40, 50 customers running on the SaaS version and stuff. And so we've seen where somebody's extension didn't flush out with the upgrade, and we got a report back from them, a notification saying, hey, your upgrade failed because of this extension. And Daniel, you worked on a couple of those and you did see firsthand how easy it was then to resolve so that we could go back to Microsoft and say, hey, okay, we're ready to go now.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a perfect process, but compared to the way upgrades had gone in on-prem data, systems, it's definitely a lot less overhead when the upgrade comes around.
True. And how about developing in the extensions?
It's definitely a different process. It can be a little bit more effort depending on what that modification is, but I do think that extra cost pays dividends back when it is time to upgrade. And on top of that, you know that you're going to be on the newest version. So Microsoft will be releasing updates and fixes to issues that maybe you don't even know you have. So having your system automatically updating can fix issues before you even run into them.
Daniel, are we able to modify Business Central SaaS, considering the extensions and their availability, are we able to modify it as greatly as we have done in the past with all the other on-prem versions? Is there any limitations to what we can do in terms of like mods development? Because it used to be everybody buys Nav, because the great thing about it is it can be modified. The worst thing about it is it can be modified. But
yeah, and there are some limitations.
Really?
I haven't run into anything significant that I haven't been able to find another way of doing. So from a development side, there are some limitations, but from the user perspective, there's almost always a way to do what the user or the customer is looking for. It just might not be the way that traditionally we'd modified it. So there's ways to modify certain parts of the base application, but whereas traditionally we may have modified, say, a posting process directly, we can trigger our code at the end of the posting process, and I haven't run into anything that we just can't do. Usually it's just the limitation typically means we have to develop it a little bit differently, but I haven't found anything that we just flat out can't do.
Cool, good to know.
My favorite part is the fact boxes. They're just such a quick link where you can just click over into a fact box. You can get a customer balance. You can see outstanding orders. A lot of times you see our customers going the long way about it, searching it up in the ribbon or going to the department listing and grabbing something from there to look at a customer balance, or your posted invoices are going a long way around, where those fact boxes are really nice and they're just nice shortcuts that you can get to all your information quickly. And a lot of people don't realize that those blue numbers are drill downs, and you can drill into those and get to your next screen and see a customer's balance or see some outstanding orders.
Right. Really, really train yourself to look right. That's what I always told myself once we went to 2015 and we had fact boxes was, train yourself before you leave the page to go find information is look right. Look right. Always look to the right, because there's a good chance it's in that fact box, or you could click the link so it pops up to see it, and then you could close it and you're still on your page. You don't have to go and find your page again, or your sales order or your quote or wherever you happen to be, but to look to those fact boxes to the right. And the other thing people don't always realize is that you can customize them. So, if there's only 6 things in the sales fact box that matter to you, then eliminate the noise and just have those 6 things that you like to look at and need available to yourself on the fact box and stuff. So you can rearrange them and customize them so that they work best for you, and put them in the order that makes sense on your screen and stuff.
What about
But,
those
yeah.
pages that you're not using a fact box and they always have the space there, and maybe they just have the notes and URL there, and it's really nothing else available? I like to eliminate those to give me more real estate on whatever it is I'm looking at, my bank card or whatever, just because some of those pages, we don't need them, right? You know what I mean?
Right.
Right,
So,
exactly. It's just too
I think
much.
the whole
yeah.
system kind of the whole system's like that, like the ribbon, the navigation pane, your pages, even your fast tabs and stuff like that on the page and stuff is, go through your system. I used to do it when I was waiting on hold. If I was sitting on hold at work, that was what I used to do. And that during that time when I was just had to sit there and wait was to like clean up another screen or another ribbon in my system and stuff and just get rid of the clutter and the noise so that only what I need is there. And it makes such a difference when you're not having to fish through 30 things to find your button you want to push and stuff. And it's just, you've got the 5 you use there. Great points. What else do we love? I know Marguerite loves demand planning and requisition worksheets.
Demand planning and requisition worksheets. So in BC, they're pretty much functioning pretty identical to how they function with the on-prem. So from a purchasing standpoint, that's an amazing thing because as a purchaser, you get so accustomed to how something works that it just drives you crazy when somebody changes. That's a personal thing. I had several changes within a year. So changes are good, but at the same time, you do get a little concerned. So, that was one of the things, even as I talk to the former people I work with and I tell them, they're like, oh, which way do we go? And they're still deciding. And, my purchasing manager was like, oh, goodness gracious, now I'd have to learn a whole new system and how it would function. And he has valid points that he wants to make sure that as the management, he can do what he needs to do and do it in a timely fashion. And, I reiterated for a lot of the processes, they don't really change. They're still very standard. The screen may have changed a little bit, but in general, they've kept a lot of the things functioning the same, especially with order entry and purchasing, which is absolutely great. My favorite, personally, though, is Rapid Start. Now renamed as configuration packages. Rapid Start initially drove me insane, made my head want to explode, and being in BC now, it just seems like it functions a lot better, it comes in a lot smoothly, and it just helps you flow. And I've personally fallen in love with it. I'm like, where can I use Rapid Start? Where can I use these configuration packages? So for me, that's my personal favorite right now.
Yep. Gotta love a Rapid Start configuration package. They aren't using them, they should be. Ask us how, we'll teach you.
Yes, as Holly said, being on the user side, I was very nervous. I was like, this is insane. I could, manually enter all these things a lot easier myself. And sometimes you can't. Sometimes there are fields that are buried and it will take you a lot more time. So it's a lot easier. And if something comes up and, you need to change, your posting groups, it's a lot easier to just throw it on Excel, fill in one, copy and paste down, and away you go. And those processes that we all used to take and turn, hours of just going over spreadsheets are now very quick processes. And like I said, on the user side, I was very scared of them. And on the partner side now, I'm like, oh, you need a Rapid Start package? No problem, I got you. So that's a great thing.
Yep. So what would you guys say? Everybody's going to answer. What is the area that we get a ticket and you go like, yay, about? For me, it's generally around the accounts receivable area. Something to do with accounts receivable. Okay, even Charge Logic, as much as I like grimace that I have Charge Logic all day for the next 4 days and stuff, but around that accounts receivable area is what, like, I go, oh, cool, an accounts receivable ticket.
I get excited when I see I can't post my inventory, or where's my inventory, or how come I can't pick this item? It's just a challenge finding inventory buried in the system.
Okay.
I like the EDI tickets.
Yeah.
Everybody
Val
knows.
loves EDI.
Yeah, you're good at it too.
I know how to map EDI, and I don't ever get to map EDI because Val just loves EDI. She never has overflow where she goes, Holly, could you do this and stuff? So we know Val, and she is a genius. I wish that she was my partner when I was on the other side doing EDI because, man, she can make anything map for anybody. Go Val.
I myself like the financials. I like doing the account schedule, building balance sheets and income statements. I find that a real challenge, and I like doing the cash flow forecasting. I just like working with the numbers. I
I
always
like
get
numbers.
excited when someone needs help with the account balances and they
Okay.
don't match. And there's different varieties that you can utilize.
I don't. When they tell me they're being ripped off, I
I
like
was
go,
wondering
oh
if we could say
I'll say,
that.
no.
hey, Tracy,
I'm
Tracy.
so glad you're here, Tracy, because
Right? That's
those are
definitely it.
those
I
are
am,
my mental challenges. Everything that you just said was your favorite.
we are a well-balanced team.
I tend to like automation tickets, so going through, sitting down with the user, watching them step through the steps they're taking, and finding out a way to cut out some of the busy work, some of the repetitive parts of their job,
Yes.
and kind of just optimize what they're doing so they can focus on things that aren't, the same 5 button clicks over and over again.
Yeah.
That's not always a good use of your employees'
That
time.
is fun. I do have to say, you are right. It is fun to be in those meetings with them and taking notes, as there you could see the wheels spinning as they're coming up with this plan and to automate and what they're going to do and stuff. And you're right, that is fun to be part of. Good
Yeah, I
call.
really enjoy that.
So as I mentioned, I'm a big fan of like the purchasing side, but my sweet spot and I get excited is when somebody says they're struggling with Lanham, especially the eShip, eReceive, and any of their purchasing products. Oh my goodness, that is my wheelhouse, especially the demand planning. I'm just like, oh, can I have that? Can I do that now? That is just my favorite.
Yep. And it's fun. Like sometimes you see like you'll be like, I gave that ticket away to somebody else. I really wanted that ticket and stuff. It's kind of fun to see how we all react to things when it's like, oh, but I wanted to do that and stuff and that. But fun to think about where everybody really enjoys being part and, just hearing that we are well-rounded and we have everyone likes different areas and has strengths in different areas and comes together as a team to work on stuff and get things taken care of for our clients and that, which is really cool.
I have one more thing too that I also like. I like the ones where there's error messages or something just isn't working. I like just trying to figure it out where the problem is, if I need to debug it or just understand the application and figure out what's wrong or what's not working, what's not set up right.
True. We did say Valerie is the figure it out kind of gal.
Needle in the haystack kind of a gal.
Yes. If we get stuck, we all go to Val, and Val can look at it and find us the answer and stuff. She does like to dig into those crazy things.
I like trying to solve problems.
That's cool. Yep. I like it. All right, so let's talk about automation since Daniel brought it up. Ways that they can do automation. Maybe they haven't really thought about it. Maybe they're new to nav and they're just running it, manual based nav and stuff. But what are some things they can do to automate within the system or with ISVs? There are some great ISVs out there that give you the opportunity for automation as well. But what are some of the things you would suggest for them to get started in doing some automation on?
Well, I think the first thing to look into is the job queue. And I think it's something that a lot of people are familiar with, but the gist of it is you can take a report, you can take a code unit, and just set it up to run every day. And there's a couple limitations to it. So things like prompts that come out to the user, yes or no questions, stuff like that, those will throw an error on the job queue. So sometimes we'll have to modify objects a little bit just to streamline them and get them ready to run without any user supervision. But it's a powerful tool. It's not too complicated to set things up on it.
Right.
And I think that's probably the first step. The first thing to look into is if you find that you're running the same things every day. If it's not something that you need to be overseeing, you can just set that up to run behind the scenes, and you'll be able to see, check in on there's a job queue error log, and you can see, maybe you had issues running certain things, and it'll give you a message about why that job failed.
True. And then, so some of the things that we would need to code would be like, if you want to do always yesterday, you can't type in the Y for yesterday or -1 day and it run. That would need to be something that we'd need to code, kind of thing. Things like that would have to happen and stuff. Also, we can, if they're getting an error, we can code in, send an email to somebody. Correct, Daniel?
Yep, absolutely.
So if it's, if you're running, like, for instance, let's say you're running adjusted costs on a job queue, which is a great thing to do if your system can't handle them just auto running and stuff. And then if you're responsible for that adjusted cost being run every day, your partner can set up an email so that if it errors out, it will send you an email saying, hey, it errored out last night. Better take a look at this, kind of a thing. So there are some things we could do behind the scenes to help with that automation and ensure that things are running as they should on the job queue. What are some ideas for the job queue? So I know I ran pretty much everything in accounts receivable, if you can imagine, on the job queue. So we did batch posting our invoices. You can run on a job queue. We set up reminders and statements on the job queue. So our reminders went every day. It ran, we had to sync it out because you've got several steps on the reminders that happen. So we had to set them up, and every day it would run and send out reminders. Once a month, it sent out statements to customers who had a balance greater than 0 by email and stuff. So we pretty much ran the whole department, other than making phone calls saying, where's our money if they were late, on job queues and automation and stuff.
Well, and what's nice about the automation is outside the job queue, if you do want to run your customer statements and you know you're going to have a slew of them to print out, or if you mail them or email them, whatever the sending process is that you utilize, you can just schedule it to run right when you leave work at 5 o'clock, for instance. So you're not bogging down the system, but you don't want to do a job queue in the middle of the night. You just want to run it one time. You can schedule it at the print window of that report and pick a time, say 5:05 you want to start, hit OK, and it'll start at that time, and it's a one-time deal.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Some of them are one time, and some jobs you've set to run multiple times throughout the day. And another one that's common to set up is EDI to run on the job queue too. To have it automatically import new orders and maybe send out invoices and 856s and stuff like that.
That's a great idea. See, I never thought of that.
Yeah.
I used to run that manually.
I see a lot of the notifications for either your workflow notifications or delegations, so it's all just automated. So you get an email when you need to approve something or when something's been delegated to you.
Yep. Another great thing is reports. So you may have sales guys who want to see their commissions report and they bug you about it all the time. Can you send me a copy of that commissions report? That kind of thing. You could set those up on a job queue to put it in their inbox on every Monday. Automatically run it on Monday morning at 7, and boom, it sends it out to their inbox with their report, so they don't bother you to send it anymore. And so then they send you a thank you email going, thanks, and you really didn't do anything and stuff. So things like that, Financial reports, you could set them up to run on the job queue and send to your C-suite so that they have those without having to ask for them and stuff. So there's different things you can run and do through the job queue. What other kinds of automation have you guys worked on or seen out there? I know Daniel's worked on a few biggies.
Yeah, I've done a couple automation projects. Automatically applying credits to sales orders comes to mind. That's something I'm working on right now. But a lot of it is optimizing objects to run on the job queue. So a lot of the automation just comes down to handling errors, handling user inputs, determining what the system should decide the user would typically input, things like that. So it's a lot of reports.
Finding triggers and then making them happen behind the scenes and stuff.
Exactly.
Which is very cool. One of the ISVs I'll shout out about, which is, in my top 3 ISVs would be Continia with OCR, optical character recognition, and using that to, their platform is for expense management and also on your purchase invoicing. So as purchase invoices come in, they automatically recognize the information and fill in your purchase invoice. You could do it with purchase orders or without, and go to an approval process without any key input and stuff, which is really cool. We blew that out of the water and then used it on the sales side and also on the accounts receivable side, and automated ACH payments and lockbox payments as they came in would populate through that OCR and populate the deposits. And so the only time we had to really do anything with deposits if they had a typo on their invoice or sales order so it couldn't match up, we'd have to adjust that and then hit post. So a lot of time saving there. I'm using that product. Any other automation ideas? If not, then let's talk about our biggest challenges. And this will be our last little teaser is those challenges. What things have you found? What were your biggest challenges in NAV thus far? Biggest tickets that you were like, wow, that was a big ticket or big issue.
I recently had a ticket that they went to go run their job and they had too many characters in one of the fields in the page, which the page stems from the table, but we couldn't get into that job to figure out which field has too many characters in it. And unfortunately, NAV did not stop them at that 50 character point. They ended up having 52. So it was definitely a challenge because a job card or job scenario can run off different tables, many tables that can make your one-page sections. So that was my biggest challenge, trying to pinpoint where those 52 characters were located so we get it corrected and then get into their job.
Yeah. Sometimes that stuff is buried deep in the
It
heart
really
of
is.
NAV. Like,
it really was, yeah.
Where? That's when we need Val. Where is it? Which table is it on? It's just like buried in there somewhere.
But the good news, Valerie and Daniel have a cool tool that they can use to help zero in on everywhere in the database where that field might be. So that sounds like a good something for that tool.
For sure. I think my biggest challenge lately was permissions in Business Central SaaS. Not easy. And in general, setting up permissions isn't easy by any means, but then in SaaS, it became a little more of a challenge. And some things we just couldn't do. And so it was really cool that shout out to Mark Kane came through as a champion on that one and taught us how to actually record those permissions in Business Central SaaS, and what a blessing that was. Any other ones?
Holly, I'm going to take it back to the user side and, make a point that when you talk with us and we come back and we say, things need to be changed, or a quote just seems like it's too much. I know sometimes it's scary to take those to the higher ups that, have to ultimately approve, especially when they're the bigger quotes, because there's a lot going on in your system. Don't be afraid to take that to those people. Your C-suite people do understand what's going on, and sometimes you just have to explain that it is going to be a lot of money, but at the end of the day, it's going to be worth it because it's going to improve the process. And, being on the user side, I've seen it. Sometimes I've taken stuff in there that was 1 or 2 hours and they say, nope, we're not doing that. And I've taken other quotes in and with 10 and 12 hours and they're like, yeah, go ahead. So, sometimes that's a challenge, is that sometimes the quotes seem like they're not there, or it doesn't seem like you should move forward with it, but never just shut it down. Always have the discussion. Even if there's not a quote involved, always have the discussion, because even sometimes we'll come back and say, we don't think you should modify that. This is how you should do it. Be open to the discussion. Don't just shut us down, just like we shouldn't shut you down. Let's have the discussion and let's understand why it needs to happen one way or the other. And that's huge, coming from both sides, because a lot of times someone just says, I want this, and we never question why, or we're scared to spend the money. Those two are big factors, but you have to look at what your long-term outcome is going to be, and if it's going to be in the best interest of your company.
True. I think that's a great point. And another point to that is if they're looking at a design document we've sent them and they're not sure how to present it, ask. Just ask us, say, hey, can you help me figure out, or help me with the wording on how to present this to my boss or to whoever I have to present it to get an answer and stuff. Just ask us. That's what we're here for. And we talk about it all the time, but it's out there for them, is that, our success is their success. So we're not successful until they are. And so that's what we're here for. So ask us. Don't be afraid to ask. Ask the tough questions. Say, I don't understand. Can you explain that to me? I need more information. Why is it taking so long? Can you show me why it takes that long and stuff, and walk you through those steps? And we are glad to do that. That's what we're here for. That's who we are.
Or even ask for us to be on a call and explain it to the C-suite, because there are times that sometimes, it just doesn't make sense. It needs to happen or it doesn't need to happen, and the higher ups are going to push one way or the other, and you don't feel that you have a strong enough voice. And that's what we're here for, is to help give you that voice. And sometimes you just need that other person standing behind you saying yes or no, so that they understand why it's that decision. And we're always here for those conversations and those meetings if you ever need them.
Very true. Any last words? Have no questions on the board at this point, and so I just want to remind everyone to check out the upcoming events and turn it back over to you, Angie. Thank you for joining us for this hour. It's been a lot of fun.
All right, Holly and crew, thank you very much. It was very well informative. And I just want to thank everyone who is on our webinar today. Thank you for joining us. And if you are watching on demand, we want to thank you. And we do have a few more webinars coming soon. Tomorrow, August 28th, we have Richard Lee from Dynamic Web presenting on boosting conversions for B2B users. And then next Thursday, September 5th, we have Marlene Mankin from Innovia Consulting, and she's going to be presenting on getting rapid start errors, learn what can cause them, and how to correct them. And check out our website for more of our upcoming events. And we also want to mention that we have our new podcast going on. It's called the Innovia Conversation, and you can find out about all the different podcast platforms to listen to on our podcast page, and that's innovia.com/podcast. So check out the podcast selection and subscribe so you get notified when the new episodes air. And Innovia is proud to be a platinum sponsor of BCUG NAVUG Summit in Orlando, Florida this year. The dates are October 13th through the 18th. And if you haven't registered already or you want more information about Summit, you can go to our conference page on our website, and that's innovia.com/conferences. All right, thank you everyone for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again soon on another Innovia webinar. Have a great day, everyone.